We've touched on artificial intelligence. We've touched on propaganda. We've touched on the voice of Mother Culture, the story that we enact as a civilization, and where we got that from the work of Daniel Quinn, Ishmael specifically, but in other books he fleshes out that idea of we're trapped in the wrong story. And I think for me, when I started this, when I agreed to do this with you, I kind of thought it was going to be on that worldview, like building a worldview, and like when we're arguing, like a lot of the arguments that are happening maybe are sort of built on that. We're not really looking at how other people construct reality, kind of thing. And then I got shot off on that, because my therapist was encouraging me to, like, hey, try out AI. And then I did. And then, I found myself getting lured down this garden path. But I was able to, at one point, I said, whoa. What's going on here? And then I backed off of it, and I started identifying some things that I thought were troublesome. And then I started doing a little bit more research. And then I told you about talking to that one young friend of mine, the barista at my local coffee shop there. And she told me about that friend of hers who had started talking to like ChatGPT. And then she told me that this friend had told her that he won't talk to her now about the stuff that he talks to ChatGPT about. And then I went, whoa, all right. Now that's weird. Like when you start preferring, to talk to whatever, the AI is over your friends. That was a concern for me. And I went out and I posted something on LinkedIn, which might have sounded a little, I read it over the other day and I said, that doesn't sound that hyperbolic, but I was, concerned about it. And I had encountered some things that I thought were troublesome from my own interactions, and one of them, I called it epistemic drift.
Yeah. I think you mentioned, I don't know if it was on mic or off mic, but yeah, I think we talked about this briefly, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, when I say epistemic, it's like knowledge, and you start with a question on something, and then I found that within a few minutes, maybe 3 or 4 prompts later, I was somewhere else that I hadn't started. Wait a minute, like, what am I doing over here? My original question was something else, and this had to do with the worldview and different books that I had read 30, 40, 50 years ago, going, all right, is this still relevant to where I'm at today, kind of thing. And what I found, and I don't know, I know you use it sometimes, so maybe you could tell me what yours is, but what I found was that rather than challenging any assumptions that you have when you go in, or the AIs that I've used, ChatGPT and Claude, they tend to reinforce what you put in.
Yeah.
So I probably should have pulled up an example, but one example was I started looking at the culture of narcissism. Because we talked about like that, I had seen that documentary, The Century of the Self, which was at least according to Adam Curtis's thesis in that documentary, that the Edward Bernays and the rise of propaganda and that whole thing created the magnification of the individual and what the individual's wants and desires and stuff are as primary, right? And then I was thinking about that, and so one of my first questions to ChatGPT was about the culture of narcissism as it relates to that. And within a few steps, that was when it started where I said, okay, well, the culture of narcissism, brilliant, addition. And then I started tossing some other books. Well, what about this book?